At the time of physical as well as mental and spiritual distress in this country and abroad, there was a seeking for divine reality. The philosophies of men were inadequate to cope with humanity's problems. Man had reached his extremity. The people and the world were at a place where nothing short of God could help and lift them. Then came the electrifying words, God is here. And in our day and in our time, they found him, teaching and preaching in the little fishing village of Sayville, Long Island, New York. At his home in Sayville, believers drawn from all walks of life and racial abstractions gathered around the abundant banquet table to fellowship with the living Christ. Never had such words of wisdom and power from the Infinite One fallen on the ears of humanity. The words flowed from his lips in a never-ending stream. Words of life and spirit and love. They were so numerous that the small staff who had voluntarily set about to transcribe them could not keep up with their transcriptions, nor could the press publish them all, and many of these wonderful words have been buried until this very day. Now a larger staff is busy getting them out to the press so the world can benefit. The following are jottings from the early notebook of one transcriber, recorded for the enjoyment and enlightenment of some, and as foundation stones toward a perfect world for others. I thank you, Father. Father Divine's words from the notebook of John Lamb. Installment number 6. If one could die for the truth, they would live on in the truth, expressive through all mankind. This statement was made by Father at the morning meal after the kingdom had been raided by local, state, and county police, and we had all been arrested and held in court all night. The raid was made at about midnight Sunday night, in the midst of a great demonstration of the Spirit, while various angels were singing in foreign tongues, dancing and praising God. The vibrations were very high, and everyone was moved, until all were standing with their hands in the air. This demonstration at such a late hour was contrary to the usual custom, as we usually do not sing after 8 o'clock in the evening. And not only that, the windows were open and the blinds were not drawn. This is the first time in my recollection that this has happened, as the curtains are usually pulled down and the windows closed at 10 o'clock. Thus it was apparently Father's will, as he was present at the table continually. The house was first surrounded, and hose lines were laid so that water could be poured in if necessary to quiet us down. The troopers came in several times by the front door, but could get no further than the front room for nearly an hour, as they were apparently held back by Father's will to witness the demonstration. Finally, one went around and came into the dining room by the back door and said he wanted to speak to Father. Father turned and said in a loud voice, "Speak." And the trooper bolted out the door like a flash. Father then quieted the demonstration, and we all stood silent in the room for about 10 minutes. Father said, "I will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on me," and quietly led us into the front part of the house. There we found the state troopers waiting, and they said we were all under arrest, but preferred not to use any force. We all got our wraps and were taken to the court in buses with the understanding that we would be there only 15 minutes. Father was meekness itself and spoke in a low voice, but never lost his authority for one moment. On the way out of the house, 2 of the men angels were beaten up by the officers, one because he resisted and the other because he would not obey. At the court I was locked in a cell and finally beaten up because I gave my new name while they found an automobile license in my pocket with the old name on it. I was finally released with the others, however, after about 2/3 had pleaded guilty and been fined $5 each, and the others had pleaded not guilty, the case to come up for trial in a few days. Father was charged separately with maintaining a nuisance and let out on $1,500 bail for trial before the grand jury. Father says he may choose to go to jail rather than pay a fine, and that it is all for a purpose. God is not limited to material and visible expressions, and yet, in the infinite truth, when you sacrifice your body and your mind through the sacrifice of both it and them, you live eternally in that truth, manifest and expressive through all mankind. The Christ in the person of Jesus as an individuality will express himself in all mankind who will tune in on the life or principle called Jesus, and he will declare again unto you with the abundance of the fullness of the consciousness of God in the severest difficulty of yours or anyone else, the greatest seeming demonstration of prejudice, the greatest seeming demonstration of bigotry, resentfulness, hatred, malice, that just beyond all these still lies the abundance of the fullness of the consciousness of good, waiting and ready to be revealed. For this cause God raised up Pharaoh, that he might spread his holy name throughout the earth. He has raised him up. Did not the Lord both raise him up, and they that were adverse to him? Did not God raise up both him and them that worked against him? It is God that worketh both to will and to do of his own good pleasure, to manifest himself. In this I have established myself in the hearts and in the minds of many, and it cannot be abolished. With or without a body, I am 100% multiplied within you alive. I am in your consciousness, and in humanity's consciousness to live forever and ever. If I had no body, it would be the same. I would live on in the consciousness of the children of men eternally, for I have not advocated unto you the personality, but I have manifested the spirit of the presence of God, the impersonal life of God that is incorruptible, undefiled, and that fadeth not away, omnipotent, omnipresent, and a present help in every need, and you have enjoyed the results thereof. If this be true, with or without a body, the impersonal life is just as operative and just as effective. It is just the same. It is no different, for the spirit of the consciousness of the presence of God is the source of all supply and will satisfy every good desire, and the abundance of omnipotence and the omniscience of that which is omnipresent. If one body stands alone in truth, that body stands with the power of all of the powers of the earth and also of the heavens. For all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth, declares the Christ consciousness expressive in all. Just beyond your highest affirmation lie the fields of endless joys beyond degree. And again I say that all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth, declares the Christ consciousness expressive in one and all as individuals. All intelligence, all classification, all clarification, all that you may know is in Christ, and Christ is in you, and Christ is both it and them, expressive in one and in all. And as soon as you still your conscious mentality, your personal activities, and be still and know, the expression of that which is expressive in all will be expressed in all its fullness and its entirety. How great and marvelous are thy works, O God, for great and holy is thy name. The gospel of Christ, of it I am not ashamed, for all power is in his name. It is wonderful. Realize that when I am not saying anything in person, when I am silent, I am 100% expressing and expressive as I am what I am without personally uttering words. Remember that this is something you can draw upon at any time of the day or night, if you will make your mental and spiritual contact, and you will be blessed. You will be blessed of the Lord. I have not requested mankind to make a personal contact, for the personal will fail you, but the impersonal is incorruptible, undefiled, and fadeth not away. It is omnipotent, omnipresent, and it is that infinite love beyond all imagination. With or without a body, God is the same. God can veil himself and pass from shore to shore and from land to land. God can pass from body to body and translate the likeness of his body from one to another. God is omnipotent and omnipresent, and is right here at this particular juncture. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. So it is a great blessing to realize that for each, the Spirit of the Christ came. He was always in you, with you, and in you. The Word says, he dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. It says he was with you and was in you, but yet it says he dwelleth in you and shall be with you. That was a pre-evidence, or in other words, a prediction that he dwelleth in you more readily or more expressively in your consciousness, and thereby men will be able to see and realize that God is in the midst of thee. That is what all of this is about. You must detach yourselves from every mortal human version and attach yourself to the great universal mind substance, to the cosmic forces of nature, and know there is no other, and know that within dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily, and you subject your personality to all the attributes of God, for they are one and no more twain. The forces that are around you, they are within you. It is no more twain, but one. It is wonderful. When you realize that, you will be able to make your mental and spiritual contact effective, and you will be able to demonstrate and show it unto the world that God is within you, with you and about you, and has united himself as you are the one. All the blood that in righteousness has been shed has atoned for someone. It is wonderful. Blood typifies the life, for the life is in the blood. When one is willing to sacrifice life, or when they are willing to sacrifice anything that pertains unto their personal life, it is universal, and you do not lose anything by making the sacrifice. I am glad because every one of you can make your mental and spiritual contact here in America, Central America, South America, in all parts of Asia, and all parts of Europe and Africa. So I'm glad to say that as charity or love begins at home and spreads abroad, we are going to manifest this mighty love right here in this dining room. And from here we are going to manifest this truth from shore to shore and from land to land. And it all comes about through those who are willing to sacrifice, even unto death. So when you have stripes, remember that it is a great reward for you and those who are blessed thereby. For by his stripes we are healed. And I am glad for everything I have gone through in this body, and that from any part of the world you can make your mental and spiritual contact, and you will be blessed of the Lord. It is wonderful. You can be blessed and healed of all of your ailments when you make your mental and spiritual contact and live in accordance with the truth as pre-rehearsed. Those who come here are blessed to come here. Whosoever thinks on me harmoniously, you contact the Spirit of truth, and the Spirit of truth brings you the blessing you desire, for the Spirit of the consciousness of the presence of God is the source of all supply and will satisfy every good desire. And remember that not one drop of blood has ever been shed for righteousness' sake that has been shed in vain. Not only the blood of the man and beast, but of the pigeons and doves for sacrifice. It has not been in vain, for it was the life of God in those pigeons and doves. And God, in the name of that animal, even felt the pain and bore it in anguish many times. It was the life of God. And I said that all of the righteous blood that has ever been shed, it has not been shed in vain. So everyone can be so wonderfully blessed. I thought about how great it is that you can come, and it is not that one of you must necessarily even come near me to be blessed. There is not to make you tremble. There is not to make you fear. For God is in you if you only know it. By making your mental and spiritual contact with Christ, that was in the body called Jesus, he will rise. Just as a well is dug so deep and you dig to the sea level and strike water there, I am just as sure that he will rise there, and that you are sons and daughters of God. You dig a well, and when you reach sea level, you are sure to find water. So it is with you when you dig deep. The law of the Spirit of life that was in Christ Jesus will rise in you and will bring you to newness of life, and you will rise from the dead. When you give up all of self, then you get all of God. There is no limitation in God. He will give you the very essence of salvation. I give you the spirit of life for misery, and woe and mortality. Make your spiritual contact, and you will be blessed of the Lord. You do not need to fret nor worry, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. I know there is no other way of spreading this truth, saving by the wrath of man. I will make the wrath of man praise me, and carry me, and carry this truth from land to land and from shore to shore. I am that serpent that was lifted up in the wilderness in the days of Moses. It is wonderful. I am glad that I can and have been a living sacrifice, for it is written in Romans 12:1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And as many as look upon this truth can be healed. I don't care what kind of ailment it is. So it is for you and for every one of you to make your spiritual and mental contact. Look with the eye of faith, and you will be able to live. Why talk about depression and such limitations when God is in the midst of thee, child of infinite spirit and love divine? If you choose to take a rock and sit down and pray to it, the government of the United States is supposed to protect you in it. If a man chose to go into his house and scream all day long at the top of his voice, he has a right to do it. Many supposedly powerful people have come to me and said they were going to see that we get justice. Now I know that God is justice, and when it comes through a mortal, I have visualized it from the human point of view. God is absolutely independent, however. I can tread the winepress all alone, and I have gained the victory. There is none to make you fear. There is nothing to make you tremble. I have started, and I can finish it. It is wonderful. So why think about depression? There is no such a thing as depression in the truth. When you get in my spirit, in my mind, and work right, there is nobody can oppress you and nothing can depress you. The blessing you will derive from the great infinite one, you will be able to impress on nations and peoples. God is not even seeking the sympathy of the mortal mind. God expresses through man, it is true, but not through the mortal mind. And God is working both to will and to do, and of his own good pleasure. He will do it. Because Jesus recognized God as the Father of his body, he could take his body with him. If he had recognized any earthly claim, the earth would have had a claim in him, and he could not have taken his body away with him. My Father and I are one, he said. It is the same Christ in you now, and it is the same one that is in all now. Did he not say, I am in my Father, and my Father is in me? If that be true, can you not see that it is Christ in you and Christ in me? He said, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. Then can you not see that Christ is in you and Christ is in me? It is not another one. It is the same one that came to redeem the world from the mortal version of its human tendencies. It is wonderful. Now you have got away from that place to see yourself as no less than God's child. You never had another father or mother, even though he chose to take on a human form to bring you out. The above talks took place the day after we had been in court all night. Services were carried on as usual during this day up until 6 o'clock, and visitors were accommodated until that time when the dining room was closed to permit the household to go to court. Only those who pleaded not guilty were required to appear, but most of the assembly went down. When we arrived at the courthouse, there was a crowd waiting in the street, and all seats were filled. But a place was cleared for us, and we filed in. The room was packed to the doors, and as many people were waiting outside as in. Reporters were present for most of the New York papers, and there were many flashlight photos taken. The dignity and poise of Father's followers was beyond description, and many of the spectators and some of the officers remarked upon it. Before the judge entered, those who had pleaded guilty and were prepared to pay their fines were ordered downstairs. Then court opened, and Father's attorneys moved for an adjournment to Friday, a period of 4 days. This was granted, and the crowd dispersed good-humoredly while we walked back to 72 Macomb Street in a body. In the course of a discussion on the various trials the angels went through in the recent arrests, Father asked the question, "Who was the man who has fasted longest in our own time?" Some answered Gandhi, and others gave various names. But Father said it was McSweeney who fasted 72 days until he died for the cause of Ireland. And he further said, how much more willing we all ought to be to do the same if necessary, when it was not for Ireland or any particular country, but that the whole world might have this Christ truth. He went on to say that those who were so equipped mentally and physically that they were able to avoid any opposition or condemnation in the world were very unfortunate, because it kept the Christ just that much longer in the tomb for them. Those who had education, ability, and all such equipment so that they went along smoothly and were not accustomed to hard knocks or criticism, were these unfortunate ones. He said the Christ would rise in proportion to the difficulties or apparent sufferings encountered, and the more concrete the apparent difficulties, the more concretely the Christ would arise and be made manifest within. In those who were willing to endure to the end, even unto death if need be, the Christ would rise and radiate so that it would be in that person's presence as it is when you carry a red-hot iron through a crowd. That Spirit would radiate out just as the heat does, and it would dissipate all hatred, all malice, all passion, all sickness, and produce a peace and calm that surpasseth all understanding. As for the trials and difficulties, you ask God for health, you ask Him for bread, you ask Him for raiment, and you receive them. Why not ask Him for wisdom and understanding in the time of trouble? You will receive that also, for God is all wisdom and all understanding. When you get the wisdom, it will be unnecessary for you to undergo some of the trials, but you must be willing to undergo them for the Christ. Last night was the night of the final disposition of the charge against the individuals in the kingdom for public nuisance. As before, there was a large crowd in front of the courthouse when we arrived there. This time, however, none had been admitted, and only those who were on trial, together with the complainants, were allowed in. Father and his attorneys went first, then Mother, and finally the names of the complainants and defendants were called, and they filed in. The case continued from 7:30 to 11:30, and in all about 18 or 20 of the neighbors testified, and about 2 or 3 who were chosen testified for Father. Newspaper men from all papers were present as before, and many pictures were taken in the court and outside. The crowd outside stood for hours in a wet fog to learn the results, and during the entire time I heard no remarks against Father, but many of the storekeepers and people of the town were speaking in his favor. Finally, the case was completed and all filed out. The result was that all were found guilty, although it is said that the case was won for Father until a witness was brought in by the district attorney, who lied and thus finished it. Father paid all the fines and threw a $500 bill down on the table, which they could not change. I believe the change was brought to him at 72 Macon Street next day. That disposed of the case against individuals, but there still remains the case against Father to be tried before the grand jury. The following talks were given today after the trial. Father had been talking about those who had opportunities in court to speak out and did not do so. I will rule in the lives of millions, for I have paid the price for the godship degree of authority, and there is no way to stop me. I will rule in the lives of millions. If they could take away this body, it would be just the same. I have the birthright of authority, and I mean omnipotent authority. It is given to me. Now trying to stop me, as I tell them, would not prohibit my work. It spreads it that much faster. I am here with you all personally for your own personal good and to appease your human mortal concept concerning me and your fears. But with or without the personal presence, I will rule millions of homes and houses, for I am divine. And that is not merely a word, it is power. I have bought the right to the godship degree of authority in and for the fears of man in all walks of life. And they that will not subject themselves to it and me will find themselves bound down and limited and excessively imprisoned. Everyone that violates the law of subjugating themselves to the higher power as birthed out in the Christ consciousness, which is the same consciousness in all, they are imprisoned mentally, physically, financially, morally, or in some way they are imprisoned. For from the prison house I came to set them free, free from the whole house of bondage. I came to let them out. Now these are facts and figures that are too stout to be denied. There is no way to prohibit me. I am not limiting the destination of man in mortal consciousness to 80 years and 10. I am not studying the limited expression of redeeming of man for just a few people, or a special tribe, or particular nationality, or some limited expression of truth. I know that I am He that has paid the price for every access and dominion and authority over the heavens and the earth, visible and invisible things. So are you, but you must unite yourself with the infinite whole before you can rightfully claim your rights and press your claim. You must be detached from all mortal claims, and you will be infinitely blessed and free from all bounds, barriers, lacks, wants, and limitations. It is wonderful. What do I care for that little money that was paid out for fines? Mr. Junior, one of the angels, put his hand in his pocket just the other day and pulled out $5. That $500 bill was in my pocket last night, and I'm sure they investigated and found it to be real money. I put my hand in my pocket and found it there. It was there when I needed it. It was there, and it was real money. Mr. Junior put his hand in his pocket also the other day and pulled out $5. And that is an evidence. Of course, as I claim to know many things, I knew the $500 was there, the same as I know I have coffee in this cup. Whether you know it or not, I know I have it there now. And when I get ready, I will drink it. For I will take it out of the coffee pot. It is no mystery. At present, I have not even the coffee in the coffee pot to put in the cup. But it is there just the same. It is always there from a mental and spiritual standpoint of view. Everything you need is always there, whether you know it or not. So I'm not trying to make any foolishness. I am talking along practical lines, and when you need anything, it is there. I let that money come that way because I am functioning on a material plane from a financial point of view. That is one of my hobbies, and it seems to be a mystery, but some of my other mysteries are just as great. When they come dumb and go away talking, when they come lame and go away walking, when they come blind and go away seeing. Now to you all, if you are persistent in advocating the truth from a literary standpoint of view and from a legal standpoint of view, that would be your privilege to give your studies, your pedigrees, your experiences, and your testimony, and what you knew. See, if what you have said to me is true, if you are not fooling me, now is your time that you can voluntarily call up some editor or reporter and give a statement of your experience. In speaking of meeting opposition and in connection with the above talk, Father said it was not necessary to his salvation that we do any of these things, that he was perfectly free to fly to the uttermost parts of the earth and find heaven. But it was our privilege and for our own salvation. He said, so far as he was concerned, he was not fighting back about a thing, and the attorneys in court were only for us as individuals, and it was our privilege to put our stand on record, and in connection with resistance. He told the following story. A lamb was crossing a bridge over a stream one day. It was a bridge formed by a single plank, and far below lay the stream. About the middle of the bridge he met a goat, and the goat reared up on his hind feet to combat him for the right of way. The lamb promptly crouched down and passed underneath the goat and went on his way. The goat, however, before he reached the end of the bridge, met another goat, and both reared up on their hind feet to fight each other, and both fell into the stream and were drowned. There was the opposition that the lamb had easily and quietly passed by, gone on to oppose something else, and finally meeting its own destruction. In speaking of the noise, Father says that if he were a natural man, he would use quotations from the Bible such as, "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord," and "Praise him with a loud voice," etc. But he was not using human means. He said he would agree that a part of the noise was not in accord with his spirit, that naturally he was quiet, although he did get into the high vibration and speak out sometimes. However, he said he knew some mortal minds, when they saw others under the power of the Spirit, try to do the same things from a mortal point of view, and some thought the more noise they made, the louder they could yell and the louder they could stomp, the more of his Spirit they were manifesting. Even some, when they had been caught up in the Spirit and made to speak in tongues, there was no need of their continuing that practice from a mortal point of view after the urge of the Spirit had ceased. There was no need of repeating things over and over again. When they were said once or twice, it was enough. He did not want anyone to think for a moment, however, that he was justifying anyone who did not approve of these manifestations and demonstrations. He said there were many who supposed they had quiet dispositions and who had been taught to sit just so and do just so at the table. But they must be reborn out of those things and do just the opposite. He was not justifying mortal mind in any way, and he wanted that understood. He was neither justifying it in its stand about being quiet, and he was not justifying it in its attempt to imitate the demonstration of the Spirit by making a noise. In referring further to the noise, Father said the Constitution guaranteed the right to worship God to the dictates of one's own heart, even if it meant going into his house and shouting all night as loud as a steam whistle. And he didn't care about any local or state ordinances to the contrary. The Constitution either stood or it should be torn up and some form of limited government instituted on a human plane in its place. I thank you, Father,